Yeah, guys, get it on. I'm about to fast you full. What do you buy at the lab? Darwin Nutrition, Biomaxa, and Capital Cycles. Let me tell you about my event yesterday, the Wellington Masters Cycling Club Interclub race number 1 of summer. Your handicap road race. Let me tell you a little bit about handicap racing. What I learnt yesterday, stuff that's coming up, some thoughts about diet. I've changed my diet. I've lost 3 kilos in a couple of months. It's helped my climbing a lot, and it's a pretty simple change. I'll tell you what it was. And by the way, it's an easy thing to do and kind of an enjoyable thing to do. That's what I think. So let's have a look, shall we? Yesterday we had the Wellington Masters Cycling Club hosting Interclub Race 1 on a very cool circuit. Just starting in Gladstone, going south through Martinborough, coming back north through Longbush Road, and finishing on the climb to Millers Road. So 1 hour 24 and 13 seconds. By the way, now we're standing there at the start. Before we started, I said, hey, look, we should take bets on what the elapsed time will be. Now, based on nothing more than 4.5 seconds of thought, I came out with 1 hour 21 minutes. Ben Knight came out with 1 hour 25 minutes. So the over-under on that is 1 hour 23, and below I win, and above he wins. So let's look at that duration. 1 hour 24 minutes and 13 seconds. Now, first thing, that means Ben wins, so I buy the beers. Second thing, that's a pretty good guess for pulling something out of your ass 30 seconds before the start of a race. Happy with that. Distance of 56.7 kilometres, climbing of 493 metres. 1,557 kilojoules. That's, say 5 or 6 McDonald's hamburgers. A lot of work in a short time. And actually, so let's look at these power numbers and stuff, because it was heavy duty. 40.4 kilometres an hour average speed. 308 watts. So that power represents from the time you start till the time you finish how much power you put through the pedals at all times, including times you stop pedaling, all of that. There wasn't a lot of times we stopped pedaling. We're pedaling all the time. Average heart rate 157, quite high. Average cadence 100. It's nice and supple. So an effective power. This takes into account all the stops and starts and the relatively more difficult acceleration that goes on, speeding up and slowing down. Not that stochastic, but a little bit. 326 watts. I'm going to put that on the that's pretty high on the pain scale. Anytime it's a race around over 1.5 hours and you're getting over about 310, 320 watts normalized, yeah, that's very hard. For me, for a total training load of 87, a good training impulse, which by the way is why I'm sitting here doing active recovery now. Fully absorb that training impulse, use it as a good chunk of training in itself. So look, there's not really even that much point looking at the data. Oh, we'll look at one or two things. Here's how it shook out. This is a handicap race, by the way. For those who don't know, it's not like a mass start or a graded race or anything like that. Sort of like a graded race, but that is the name handicap would imply. The slower groups get to go away first, and the idea is that it should be handicapped in such a way that the groups should pretty much catch each other or come together for the finish. It never quite works out like that, because of course that's very hard to figure out. But in the end, it wasn't bad. So in the scratch group, we only had me, Dave Rowlands, and Ben Knight. And that's kind of terrifying as it is, because we're all reasonably good time trialists. You just know there's going to be a lot of pain. We started with a 6-minute deficit on the next group up the road. We probably had to pull back, I don't know, I haven't looked at it, something like around half an hour on the first group over a relatively short period of time. From the gun we were going very hard. You can see my heart rate and power doesn't really change that much. You know, averaging an EP 340 watts for the first 15 minutes. It probably came down a little bit over time. And as the course got a little hillier, but yeah, it was very, very strong. Unfortunately, Ben Knight, who by the way is an excellent time trialist, just couldn't hold on, and we dropped him. We did allow him to come back on again, figuring that maybe he just got the start wrong, but no, he couldn't stay on with me and Dave, and I can't blame him because we were hauling, and we did lose 20-30 seconds from the fact that we stopped and waited for Ben. And by the way, this is no slide on Ben at all. That turned out to be almost exactly the same time that we couldn't catch the front riders by. Maybe there's a lesson in there, which is, you know, don't wait. Maybe that's what it is. And look, here's how it went. You can probably see from the data yourself. It was Dave and Steve doing a 2-up time trial for best part of an hour and a half together. That's it. When you're with a guy like Dave, it's very relentless. And I guess the thing that came out, well, let's zoom in a little bit on a nice chunk of data here. I mean, you can see, if you're sort of good at reading the power line here, the red, you can see very clearly a period from about the 20 minute to the 40-minute mark. This is just a long, flat section of us taking turns. So if I look at my turn here, and I focus in on that, just over 1 minute, 357 watts, right bang, just under my sustainable power on the flat, 42.8 kilometers an hour. And then a little burst you'll see at the end there, which is me getting back on his wheel. So then you can see Dave's turn here. If I focus in on that, almost the same, 55 seconds, so we're both pulling a roughly minute turns. See my power there, averaging 291 watts. So a really good rule of thumb, and by the way I've measured this, about 30%, 25 to 30% in power is what you save drafting. Assuming, making some assumptions about wind, body size, speed, all that. But if you said 25 to 30%, it turns out to be pretty accurate. I've tested this quite a few times with a friend with the same power meter on the road with about 10 or 20 data points. So here's what I'm saying is, if you look at that power 291, if you were to add 30% to that, or 10%, 30, so if you added something like 90 watts to that, that's going to be roughly 80 to 90 watts is going to be roughly what Dave was pulling on the front, which gives him about 60 watts or something like that. So here's what I'm saying, both really evenly matched dudes, both pulling turns about 360 watts. Maybe a little lower for him because he's a little smaller dude for me, but he was super strong. I think he was a little stronger than me, and I think his turns were probably a little faster. So he may be pulling the same power, but actually with a slightly smaller body size, better aero, maybe something like that. Regardless, we're all pretty evenly matched. And you can see for this whole section, whole 10 minutes or whatever, 7.5 minutes. So I was averaging about 311 watts, normalized 320, for a speed on the road of 42.5 k an hour there. That was just with a crosswind. So hauling along pretty good. And really the way it went is we just kept picking up in the last half of the race, groups on the road. Some guys would hold the wheel for a minute, some guys wouldn't. I kind of said Dave had, by the second half or last third of this, was doing more work than me, and on that basis I didn't feel like it was right for me to contest the finish for him, so I didn't. Having said that, I'm pretty sure he would have beaten me in the uphill sprint regardless, because he's a very good rider. But it's sort of the series that's of more interest to me. I don't think if I was on my own I would have been as fast as I was with Dave. He did a lot of work. We picked up most riders except for about 5. The win being taken by Rob Kilvington from the last break group really well over riders like Fitload riders like Jason Guestro. Steve O'Keefe was in the top 10. Lots of good riders doing really, really well. That's sort of how it went. Here's the learning. Here's the thing. You know, there was lots of times, you guys probably felt this. Tell me if you felt this. You felt this feeling like, I can't hold the wheel anymore. Or, you know, like, it's kind of like a form of torture when you're holding the wheel. It would be so easy to bug out. You ever see those movies where they're training Navy SEALs, and one of the first exercises is they are all lying on the ground, all lined up, backs down on the ground, while the drill sergeant sprays water from a cold fire hose all over them, and they have to do maybe press-ups or crunches or something, and this just keeps going on, and it's a lot of pain and torture. And they have a bell right in the courtyard. All you have to do if you want to give up and go home and stop the pain is ring the bell and walk off. Obviously you're out of the program then, but can you imagine how after an extended period of time of that, or the drill where your link arm's on the beach, whatever it's going to be, it becomes more tempting every second to ring that bell. And that's what it's like being on a 2-up time trial like this, wanting the pain to stop so badly. All you have to do is ring the bell. Ring the bell in this case means pull off the wheel and ride by yourself. Here's the thing. Bike racing on the road is often just about sustaining the suffering for another, sometimes it's just 10 seconds, guys. Sometimes that 10 seconds will be enough for some guys to drop off the back and you beat them and you carry on. Sometimes it's another minute. Sometimes in my case it was kind of yesterday, it was kind of like 45 minutes. But here's what I'm saying. The key, I think, is recognizing that in bike racing, it's just, the difference is often just 10 seconds more suffering. Lots can change in that 10 seconds. It could be that people fall off the back and you are able to ride away from competitors and they're blown. I mean, it could be that that extra 10 seconds, you know, the person slows down, you're on their wheel. That happens all the time. It seems like an insurmountable amount of suffering when that person on the front is 30 seconds into a turn at 400 watts, you're already halfway through the race, and you can hold on but you don't want to, and it seems like you're ready to ring that bell. Try not ringing the bell and see what happens. Try suffering on the wheel an extra 10 seconds and see what happens. You probably won't die, and a lot might change in that 10 seconds. That's sort of what I learnt. Well, I kind of learned a while ago, but I think was reinforced in yesterday's event for me. I was ready to ring the bell a few times, and I didn't, and it kind of paid off. I took like a few more places I wouldn't have otherwise. So thank you to Masters Club running another really good event. So the other thing I was going to mention Oh, and Trina, I know, coming taking photos. It's always good. By the way, I'm genuinely, I've run a bunch of races before with the PMP Mountain Bike Club, and I would say that you don't even really have to do much, but if you say to the organizer, thank you, I appreciate it, I appreciate the fact that you've taken this time away from your family or doing anything else that you wanted to do for half of a weekend day, that's wildly generous. I mean, it's good for you to do those generous things, it really is. Like everyone knows that giving is infinitely more important ultimately than receiving. But it requires you to make the effort and get it done and not make excuses. So people like Deborah and John and I'm missing the good people who turn up every week from the club and put these things on. Especially, I'll shut up in a second, I promise. Especially with all of the extra rules about traffic management in the last couple of years, is an accomplishment, and I appreciate it, and thank you. So, the diet thing. Everyone's always fascinated about diet. Okay, so first thing first, if you're a cyclist and you announce you need to lose weight, you're welcome to do that. First, before you announce that you want to lose weight, number one, know what your weight is. Secondly, know the proportion of that is fat versus muscle. And then, thirdly, determine, based on reason and evidence, what is the basis for a good level of, especially fat, because fat, I don't entirely understand this, fat proportion has a relationship to hormone function. If your fat percent drops too low, you will feel miserable because your hormone function reduces. Everyone kind of knows this, by the way. Everyone who's lost a lot of weight in a hurry knows that feeling, and that's partly why it's not sustainable. Like for a middle-aged dude like me, just so happens that, and hey, by the way, it probably depends on your genetic makeup, probably depends on a lot, but let's just talk in generalities. Middle-aged European white dude, about that 10% body fat figure is nice. As a wild generalization, that's going to mean you're very lean, but you have excellent hormone function and subsequently power. Getting under 10% is fine. Things get a little squirrely, too much less than that. So that's why it's important to have the balance. Go underneath about 5% as a middle-aged dude. You are likely to, you're likely to sacrifice power and quality of life and lots of things. And of course, above about 15%, you probably have a little to lose. And that range, 8 to say 12%, that's a real sweet spot. I have the Tanita scales we use at FitLab. I measure myself on a regular basis, so I'm sitting about 9. So, 9.5. And that's a nice level for me. This guy's like other coach, Scott McDonnell down in Christchurch, for FitLab. That's a dude, he can, same age as me, actually a little older, he can hold 6, 7, 8% pretty easily. So there's a genetic function there, but there's definitely limits. So get that figured out. You can come see me, do a composition test, or you can just buy some scales that do it. Try to get, decent ones. Maybe like the cool Garmin ones or something. Or the Tanita. Whatever it's going to be, get something decent so you've got a reasonable level of accuracy. And after that, you can have a good idea of how much fat mass you can lose and what that relates to in your overall mass. maybe I should leave it at that. But just all I'm saying is have some basis of evidence for your decision you need to lose weight. Second part is, let's assume that you're sitting about 15-16%. See a lot of guys like this. Women, by the way, I should mention, will carry a higher fat percentage normally. 5 to 10% on average higher than dudes. So all of this applies the same. And there may even for women be more things like, menstrual cycles and other hormonal issues to take into account. So knowing what you're doing and why is important. So I'm primarily talking about dudes here. So let's say you're a 40-something-year-old dude. Your average height, weight, average kind of bell curve of European descendant maniac like myself. Well, it's likely that at 15%, 16% body fat, let's say you're 80 kilos, if you take off 5%, you want to get to 10% body fat, that's reasonable. What does that mean? Well, 5%, assuming that it's all fat coming off your mass, 5% of 80, that's going to be about, this terrible math, but 3.5, 4 kilos, something like that. So, as a target then, you can look at 76, 77 kilos maybe being a good target weight, assuming no muscle loss, assuming everything else is even, assuming that's all from fat loss. So there's your target. Okay, so then the last piece is what to do, and handing out dietary advice, especially when you're not an expert like me. All I'm saying is I can tell you what's worked for me based on the evidence I had presented to me. And the evidence I had presented to me from quite a lot of experts was that by replacing as much as possible the carbohydrate and sugar, same thing I know, but let's just talk about different thing. Carbohydrate and sugar proportion of your diet, and replacing it somewhat with nutrition sources that are dense in fats and proteins. And there'll be discussion around what sort of fats and things like that, but let's just keep it sort of simple for now. And why? Everyone knows that fats and proteins have a higher caloric, are higher in calories per gram than carbohydrates, something like 5 versus 9 grams, something calories per gram, something like that. But here's the thing, when you ingest carbohydrates and sugars, the method by which you oxidize it causes you to secrete hormones or processes in your body which cause you to become hungry again faster. By the way, I never bought into this. I did not sign off when people would announce things like, oh, if you eat lollies you're hungry again straight away. It is BS. I never really found that. But I find it to some extent, and you get to see this when you replace some of those calories from pastas or breads or lollies or anything like that with stuff like a boiled egg, a chunk of meat, some cheese. And here's what happens. Your satiety level, your fullness, your feeling of fullness, handful of issues, goes on for longer, resulting in you overall consuming fewer calories. Still a kind of a calorie in, calorie out situation. I'm sure it's a little more sophisticated than that in reality, but in terms of calories in, calories out, overall you ingest fewer calories. Bingo, bango, bongo, you will, in some form or another, lose some weight. And, okay, so I realize there's people screaming at me right now announcing that I've got it wrong and it's much more sophisticated than that, and no doubt it is. But as a sort of an overview, I don't think that's bad. So here's what I did. Here's what got me to 3 kilos in 3 months or thereabout, was doing exactly what I said. So I'll okay, breakfast might look like an egg and a bit of bacon. Lunch might look like a Subway or something, which, by the way, I'm fully aware contains a lot of carbohydrate from the bread and stuff. Here's what I'm saying: you don't have to cut it out completely. Dinner might look like, vegetables and meat, and maybe, replace some of the carbohydrate proportion, like if you had spuds or something, with lentils or chickpeas or something like that. And then if you're hungry during the day, maybe nail a handful of cashews or almonds or something, or a boiled egg. And look, dudes, it's worked for me. 3 kilos in 3 months. That's pretty significant, and it's really helped me on the climbs. That's one thing I've noticed has not affected my hormonal function at all. Feel fine. And I kind of like not having that feeling of being hungry. You can do this, and then you sort of have this sensation. Everyone who's done this notices one thing, which is you get hungry, but you can kind of ignore it. You don't have that gnawing kind of feeling. And that's kind of cool. And by the way, there's a lot more stuff you can do involving intermittent fasting and much more sophisticated versions, but like gym work, like training, like diet, simple is better. And instantly everyone wants to announce all of the thing. Yeah, it's like gym work. As soon as you get into it, it's made so complicated by personal trainers and so time consuming that it's not sustainable. Get in, push some heavy weights on your legs, get out, boom. That's doable, but a lot of anal discussion about the intricacies of these things kind of means that it just never gets done. And sometimes just getting it done 95% is a lot better than getting it done 0%. The 100% does not exist. So anyway, that's what I think. Replace some carbs with some fats and proteins. Part of this was started off by my writer Helen Beatty, who is has infinitely better knowledge than me about this, is a very scientifically qualified person, and has really helped me with that. So I didn't read the book she sent me in entirety. I read it a bit, and then I spilled coffee on it. I'm sorry about that, but it's helped me. Give it a try. I don't think it'll hurt you. All right, so next week is the New Zealand Masters Games in Wanganui. I'll be there, as will a lot of guys. Watch the descent and the climb and the road race if you're doing that, dudes. And by the way, the hill climb if you're doing it, apparently short and brutal. Just go hard. And the time trial course is nice, semi-rolling. Of course, you'll enjoy it. So come and see me there. Grab some Biomax or grab some Tailwind. Talk to me about FitLab. As always, this is brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition Biomax Capital Focus. If you want a training program, you can email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or you can go to our website, fitlab.co.nz. Check us out, check out our plans, check out our testing, and I'll see you on the weekend.